Hey everyone, I'm Deke. Today I want to try something a little different. I'm going to do a commentary over a Battleground. I recently put out a video on the Condemn build that I play in Battlegrounds. Thought it might be interesting to do commentary over a match and kind of talk through my decision making and how I play the match. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes, and maybe we do more of these in the future. So up top, let's just get a feel for what my player power is compared to other people that I may be fighting against in the Battlegrounds. If you want to see a more in-depth guide on the build itself, I'll put a link in the description below. In my current build, I have 14,741 damage and around 170,000 life. My combat rating's 14,676, and you can see some of my additional stats here. Armor, 1,500-ish, armor penetration. I'm getting close to 2,000 there, which is really good. And then I have 2,880 resonance. Another thing that's important to note here is that my clan also has a tower that is giving us a 20% damage buff in PvP, which is very powerful. Okay, let's get into the match. So usually the first thing I do when I get into a Battleground is I kind of look for players that I recognize. If it's, people that I've been on the same team with or people that I fight against, I try to identify some of the main targets that may be difficult. I usually am a person that gets the parties going if they're not bugged. And just to try to make sure that, I have a full team with my banner on them. I can tell from looking at this already that there's several players that are at least above 3K. Usually you'll see some 4K wings, like the white wings, if you've got 4 or 5K players. I'm not seeing those, so this may be a match where it's a little bit more balanced in terms of the players on each team. I know I saw Disco on the other side. He's, I think, a 3.5 to 4K Demon Hunter. So I've been really impressed with the balance changes that Blizzard has made to Battlegrounds. Since they've made that change, my matches have been a lot more fair in terms of the players that I'm paired with. Previously, I was pretty much exclusively in 7K player matches. Because I've done well in the past, I've always been high ranking on the leaderboard, and I believe that somehow made my MMR such that I would always be placed in these very, very high resonance games, which is very difficult. And in games where there's a little bit more balance, 2, 3, 4, even 5K players, I tend to do a little bit better. One thing that I'll go ahead and say off the bat, I've already done 50 games in the cycle. It just turned and I've gotten 50 games in. I think I'm rank 10 right now. There are a lot of Crusaders. And there's a variety of builds being played, but I would say the majority of them do revolve around this Bubble and Condemn. And you have to be very careful when you use your cooldowns and when you go in, because Crusaders counter Crusaders, which is kind of funny. So you really have to pay the most attention to how you're setting up your team and how you're utilizing your resources. So it looks like I'm getting rocked here at first. Let's see. I'm saying something in zone chat. Don't let Disco sit in the back. He is a 4K DH. So this is something that I want to point out. And you'll know this if you play MOBAs, stuff like Heroes of the Storm, League of Legends. You need to be positively vocal in chat. If you want to win more games, the idea is not just to stay silent. The idea is to lead and lead by example. So try to stay positive even if you're losing. If you know what you're doing, try to direct the flow of battle to some degree. I wouldn't say be overly vocal, but I would say, if people really aren't doing what they should be, try to speak up and see. Now we're attacking, and as I've said in my previous video on the Condemn build, attacking is usually going to be a loss. We'll see what the outcome of this one is. Looks like I'm already on a 4 kill streak, which is, pretty good for this early in the game. We're 4 minutes in. You can see that I have a very in and out kind of play style. I get in, I pop my stuff, I get out. And then you have Condemn off cooldown quite often. It's a very short cooldown. But what I did here is a total no-no. Like, I didn't have Bubble, I didn't have Banner, and I basically just walked into their team. This is a play that you never really want to make. Something that I want to point out that seems obvious, but I think it bears saying, use your primary attack. Hit players with that thing. It's a little bit difficult to control your primary attacks, your auto attacks, if you will, in melee. It's much easier on ranged. But I find that when a player jumps on me and I just auto them 2 or 3 times, you know, they go down. We'll see if I can get Disco here. Yeah, I just primaried him. I didn't have my cooldowns. I didn't have a way to just do this big bomb explosion, which is what my build is set up for. But if a target is going to stand there in front of you, primary them. I'm using the weapon that gives me some burning effects over time as well, so that helps. If you hit them a couple times and they run away, sometimes you get a kill just from that. So I can tell kind of from looking at the mini map right now that this is probably going to be a loss, just based on how slowly we're able to work things up. Another thing, speaking of the mini-map, that's probably worth saying, when I'm playing, I'm not really looking at the character screen until I'm in direct combat. So you do a little bit of micromanaging. I'm basically looking at the mini-map and the red dots to gauge when I'm going to use my skills, right? I'm not looking at the actual screen to gauge that. So say I'm away from the group and I'm going to go in and I want to make a play. I want to do a bomb, you know, I want to blow everybody up. I'm watching the mini map so that I can gauge where players are, and hopefully I'm able to hit my skills before those red dots get into a range where, say, I could get hit by a barbarian charge. You just saw like I got hit by that scorch roll, and that does a knockback. So these things that do knockbacks, you need to time your abilities so that you don't get knocked back, because unfortunately in Diablo Immortal, when you get interrupted, your skills go on a full cooldown, which I really wish they would change this. I think there's 2 big changes that they should make to the game. They should make it so that your cooldowns have a 2 or 3 second cooldown if they're interrupted, not a full cooldown. And on top of that, the way that they would combat the amount of crowd control that would be happening because there's more skills off cooldown, it gives CC diminishing returns like all other PvP games. So I think those are 2 big things that could be changed in PvP and Diablo Immortal that would make it so much better. You can see I do a lot of just kiting around. Now, one thing that I noticed just as an observation here is that, you know, I'm doing very well at killing their team, but that doesn't really help me win the game, right? What helps you win the game when you're on attacking is having actual tanks. And I am not an actual tank because I can only sit in the group for, you know, 4 seconds. And as soon as I get CC'd, my bubble wears off and I just get blown up. So I'm not actually a tank. You really need some barbarians to sit on your front lines and occupy the players, because one thing that I notice, and I'm sure I've been guilty of it and most people are guilty of, when you have a barbarian that is in Undying Rage, everybody just wants to sit and hit him and deal damage to him, and that doesn't really get you anywhere. So it looks like this was a pretty even match. We're about to lose on time, which is a better way to lose, right? Oh, 5 kill streak, 6 kill streak. I mean, you can see how this condemn build really just rakes in the kills. If people don't have their cheat deaths or their phoenixes up, I just go in and just snipe everybody. It's a loss. I actually see a lot of these on attack where, you know, I'll do well, I'll have high assists if not MVP. Now here at the end of the match, what I do is I scan over the opponents that I played against to get a feel for the relative resonance of the group that I was in. And you'll see that almost everybody in the match that I was fighting against is 600 to 1,000 to 1,200 resonance higher than I am in this match, which I think was a pretty fair match overall. But I think this is a good indicator to show that if you have a good build and you play it well, you can have good results in Battlegrounds. And currently, you know, for me, a win is having a good KDA. Not that I'm necessarily just looking for kills, but I want to play the match well. And in this scenario where attacking is usually going to lose and defense is usually going to win, there's not much that you can do about that. Like I said, you can try to coach your team to some degree, but I think until they make dramatic changes to the way attacking and defense works, or they allow us to queue as a group or a warband, which would be incredible, I think this is just kind of the outcome that we're going to get in most Battlegrounds, unless you have, flukes of games. I think 50 games in, I've had more wins on attack maybe than I had last season with the balance changes. So we'll see overall at the end of the season how it shakes out. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, let me know in the comments, and happy crusading.